questions that Kim and I get the most often is, how were we able to convert so much of our property into productive permaculture so quickly, converting almost a full acre in about 3 years' time? What we hear so often is people saying, we've been at our site for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, and we've still never moved past a few garden beds or a small garden area, and at best we only keep that every few years. And the answer is, we put nature to work for us. Now, what does that really mean? Polycultures. It means we designed a garden as a tapestry of complete guilds and polycultures. The key to understanding that is to realize that every time you plant a new conventional garden bed, you're giving yourself more work. You're going to have to come back to that bed and till it and plant it and maintain it and weed it and water it. You're going to have to do that not just this year, but every single year. So if you do one new garden area and that takes up 50% of your time in the first year, the second year that's also going to take 50% of your time. And if you add to that another similar size, that's going to take 50% of your time. Well, it's not a whole lot of time left to ever get any place else. But when you establish a perennial polyculture, in the first year that may take 50% of your free time, but the next year it's only going to take 5%. So you can move on to the next area. So I want to take you through the exact process that we use to do that here at Lily House. The very first thing we did when we moved in was establish a few fruit tree guilds right outside our front door with a variety of high-value perennial vegetables that we could propagate and use to gild out the rest of our yard. We made sure to get all of our water systems and swales right so that we wouldn't have to worry so much about watering. We also took the time to do a bit of our hardscaping in our paths so that we wouldn't harm our trees later if we had to do it then. We also made sure to establish good perennial walkable ground covers for our paths. Taking the time and using this planned guild up front meant we had a beautiful forest garden guild area even in the first year. At the same time that we established those few small collections of plants for our fruit tree guilds, we also wanted to establish a boundary around the garden, so we used an edible hedgerow guild to establish the border. We started by planting out all of our woody perennials at the spacings that we wanted to see them at, and then as we had time we'd fill in with perennial herbs and vegetables that we could use that would help fill in while the hedgerow was establishing and also provide that earlier yield. In our first year, we also identified a few problem areas that took a lot of maintenance time for us, such as this upfront slope. And we quickly wanted to establish something that was much more low maintenance on those, and that saved us a lot of time since then. And finally, we wanted to get started on our backyard food forest too, but we didn't have enough time or enough plants or enough time for maintenance to really get things going with the kind of precise guilds that we did in our front yard. So we just piled on the organic matter in any way we could, and then started planting into it with a variety of perennial vegetables as well as a Three Sisters guild to get an early yield and get the ground covered. Since then, we've simply just been continuing to sheet mulch in and plant in a variety of perennial vegetables using a kind of ecologically modeled guild that you might see in the wild. A lot of it pretty closely resembles the ecologically modeled hedgerow in our front yard, using very tight plant spacings and a lot of plants that you might find in that sort of situation in the wild. In year 2, we finished establishing all of our fruit tree guilds and we began to really gild out with perennials and perennial vegetables the rest of our veggie patch with those great veggie patch guilds. Just as before, we'd make sure that we got everything right and so it would pop before we moved on to the next guild. We also, in second year, established our espalier apple trees on the south of our yard. In year 3, with all of our fruit tree guilds, forest garden areas, and edible hedgerow established, we were really able to turn our attention to these veggie patch guilds, tweaking them, making sure we were getting everything just right, and really being able to tune up the productivity. And now in year 4, we are still adding to the garden, one guild at a time, getting it right, and then moving on. And so far, in 4 years, we haven't had to do much to redo any of our work or replant or maintain any of our guilds. We've come a long way in just 4 years. Sometimes it even surprises us to look back and see what it was like when we started. So there it is, a tapestry of polycultures, walking the dog around the yard, one polyculture at a time, until you get your project all set.